Hello and welcome back to the Fantasy Playmakers. What's up, guys? I'm recording this on Monday night. Just finished watching the Packers-Lions game, and that means it's time for me to go through my start sits at the running back position. So in this video, I'm going to go through all 16 matchups for week 3, go through every single team, and then talk about whether or not I would start or sit every fantasy relevant running back on those teams. That way I talk about every single fantasy relevant player, and that means this video can be useful for everyone. So while you guys are watching this, if you're enjoying the content, please just hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. It could be trade advice, start sit questions, waiver wire questions, anything fantasy football related. You comment down below. I will make sure to get back to you. But let's just get started with the first matchup. We have Thursday Night Football, Carolina Panthers traveling to Houston to play the Texans. And for the Panthers, we do not even need to talk about this one. Christian McCaffrey is going to be a start, the number one running back for fantasy football, so he is locked into your lineup every week. And then for this Texans team, I really don't feel comfortable starting any of these running backs. They get all of them involved, Mark Ingram, Phillip Lindsay, and David Johnson. So they're all going to be sits. This is a pretty solid Panthers defense, and overall, I just think the Texans are going to struggle. We found out that Tyrod Taylor is going to be out for around 4 weeks. So overall, I just think this Texans offense is going to struggle big time, and none of these running backs are really going to put up, startable numbers for you. Then let's move on to Sunday's games, and we're going to start it off with the Colts traveling to Tennessee to play the Titans. And on this Colts team, I'm going to be starting Jonathan Taylor. He should be locked into your lineup week in and week out. Didn't have a great week 2, but he should bounce back this week against this bad Titans defense. And then I'm going to be sitting Nyheim Hines. Personally, I just do not love starting these kind of RB2s on teams who are the pass-catching backs. Really, the only one I feel comfortable starting is going to be James White, but we'll get to that later. It just seems like these guys will have their big games, but you never know when it's going to happen. And he had a solid week 1, but then if you played him week 2, you're going to be very disappointed. So he is going to be on my bench. And then for the Titans, Derrick Henry locked in, just like Christian McCaffrey, every single week. Then we're on to the Falcons Giants game, and I'm actually going to be starting Mike Davis. This was a tough call with Davis and Cordero Patterson, but I'm going to start Davis and sit Patterson. I was actually pretty impressed with how Mike Davis performed against the Bucs. He ran the ball pretty well and was targeted a bunch. So even though this Falcons offense isn't going to be great, he's going up against an easier defense. So I think he does have a little bit more touchdown upside this week against the Giants, and I kind of think this is the chance for him to really put it all together. He's gotten the opportunities in week 1 and 2. He really just hasn't punched in, a super top tier fantasy performance, and I think this could be the opportunity. For Patterson, I do think he's just going to be slightly behind Mike Davis in terms of those touches, but if he goes out week 3, gets in the end zone again, then I think we really have to start considering him to be a week in, week out start. For this Giants team, I know Saquon has not been great for the first 2 weeks, but his usage was much improved in week 2 on Thursday Night Football. He has a long break from that Thursday night game, so he's probably going to have his highest snap count in week 3, and he's got to be in your lineup. I think this is really the chance for him to truly break out, get that kind of workhorse role back, and we should start to see some flashes of rookie year Saquon Barkley. The next matchup we have here is a divisional game between the Chargers and the Chiefs. For the Chargers, I'm going to be starting Austin Eckler. The storyline week 1 was 0 targets. He wasn't involved in the receiving game. What was up with that? But in week 2, we saw that he 100% had that roll back, so you guys should not be concerned. Austin Eckler is a locked-in RB1 for the rest of the season as long as he stays healthy, so he is definitely going to be in my lineup. Then we're on to the Chiefs, and this is a tough call with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I'm going to list him as a start, but it's not something I feel confident in. In the 2 leagues that I have CEH in, he's probably not going to be in my lineup, but it's because I picked him in the 3rd round. So those are leagues where I had the 1st or 2nd pick, and I went running back, running back, running back. So, he's not one of my RB2s. So I could, put him on my bench for a decent wide receiver. I feel like a lot of people are not going to be in that same situation. CEH is going to be their RB1 or RB2, and I just don't know how much depth you have at the position. So he's definitely not a strong start, but it's not the worst thing in the world. Hopefully, those bad performances can kind of be chalked up to tough defenses. The Ravens and Browns, they're not slouch defenses, but still, I'm not feeling great about him. I think best case scenario, he goes out, balls out week 3, and then you can kind of trade high on him. And then I'm going to be sitting his backup who actually took his goal line touch. So very concerning, but he's not going to be getting enough work for me to want to actually start him. He's more of just a hindrance to CEH. Then the next matchup we have here is the Bengals traveling to Pittsburgh to play the Steelers. And these are two pretty locked-in starters. These are some of the workhorses who have the biggest monopolies on their backfield. So Mixon and Najee Harris have to be in your starting lineup. Then we've got the Bears traveling to Cleveland to take on the Browns. David Montgomery in your lineup, had a really, really nice week 1. Kind of took a step back week 2, but a lot of running backs' performances can really just depend on whether or not they get into the end zone. He should still be a locked-in, high-end RB2 at the worst for the rest of the season. And then I'm going to be sitting his backup, Damian Williams. For the Browns, Nick Chubb has to be a locked-in start. The man is just an absolute beast. And then I do have Kareem Hunt listed here as a start. He's kind of a player who's very touchdown dependent just because he kind of is getting the second level of touches. Nick Chubb is going to out-touch him every single game. Hunt may have a few more receiving opportunities, but a lot of his production just comes down to him getting into the end zone. But I still think he's kind of a fringe start or a flex play you could throw into your lineup. Next matchup, it's going to be the Ravens taking on the Lions. And these were some interesting decisions for both teams. For the Ravens, I'm going to be starting Tyson Williams. And it kind of seems like people really want to give up on him. If I could sell high on him for a player that I feel very confident in, sure, I'd move him. But he's not someone that I feel like I need to trade away immediately. Right now, he's still operating as the number 1. He's getting the most touches. And most importantly, he's getting the receiving work that really was just non-existent in this offense before. So obviously it would have been great if he capitalized on that red zone carry he had. Instead he fumbled. They still scored, so it didn't cost him. But if he punches that in, he ends up having a really nice game. They have been using Latavius Murray a fair amount, but he is still being out-touched by Tyson Williams. So I'm going to have Murray on the bench. Tyson Williams is going to be the starter. You just know Lamar Jackson is going to steal some of those goal line carries. It's going to happen, but I still think he's going to be the RB1, even if it's kind of close between himself and Latavius Murray. For the Lions, I'm going to be starting DeAndre Swift. Jamal Williams had that massive week 1, didn't have as much production week 2. This Lions backfield is a little bit weird to monitor because it almost seems like if the team is getting blown out, it's better for both of these running backs. And normally that's the opposite, right? You want your team to go up early so then the team can just run the clock out with these running backs. But it seems like, early in the game, if it's competitive, they're almost a dead split in terms of carries. But then once they get behind, that's when they have to throw the ball. Defenses are playing way back. They're kind of just giving the checkdowns up. So that's where Swift and Williams can kind of capitalize. Swift had a decent amount of his production in Monday night's game, basically just on that last garbage time possession where he was just kind of racking up these receptions. So if Swift's the guy who's going to be in there for those opportunities, he's going to be the start, and I'm going to have Jamal Williams on the bench. Then we're on to the Saints traveling to Foxborough to take on the Patriots. And even though Alvin Kamara has not lit it up to start the season, he's still got to be in your lineup. And I'm going to be sitting his backup, Tony Jones Jr. For this Patriots team, I actually feel confident starting Damian Harris and James White. Damian Harris is going to be the guy on the ground. James White is going to be the guy in the air. And he's also getting a decent amount of running work. Not something that's really going to rival Damian Harris, but a few carries a game. He had a rushing touchdown last week. So that's great news for James White owners, and I'd be fine with both of those guys in my lineup. We have the Cardinals up next here in a juicy matchup against the Jaguars, but I am actually only going to be starting Chase Edmonds. He's the guy who's going to be in when it's competitive. He gets all the receiving work out of that backfield. James Conner's the guy who kind of closes the game out. And you may think that's a decent play this week, and in deep release, he could potentially be a flex play. But honestly, this Jaguars defense has been terrible, but they've been fairly effective at stopping the run. The Texans were very inefficient on the ground, so were the Broncos in week 2. So, the defense gets carved up, but it's really not from the rushing attack. So I'd rather have the more all-around running back in, and then I don't feel comfortable starting James Robinson or Carlos Hyde. James Robinson did have some improved touches in week 2. He was easily the number 1 over Carlos Hyde, but I just expect this Cardinals offense to just run through the Jaguars. They're going to be down early, and they're just not going to be able to rely on the run game. So sitting both of those players. Then we're on to the Washington football team playing against the Bills, and I'm going to be starting Antonio Gibson. He did have a down week 2, and a lot of that was just due to J.D. McKissic getting a lot of the touches in those 2-minute drills. I feel like that was kind of just an unlucky outcome in week 2, so Gibson should bounce back. He's still going to be the workhorse there. And then I am going to be sitting J.D. McKissic. That kind of comes back to the point I made, I think, when I was talking about Nyheim Hines, where, J.D. McKissic basically did nothing week 1. Then he comes out, puts together this really nice week 2 performance. but it's like how many people actually had him in your lineup? Then you might feel, oh, I want to start JD McKissic. Then week 3, he could go out and basically give you nothing. You just never know what you're going to get out of these pass catching backs. So I am going to be sitting him. For this Bills team, both of these players are going to be a sit for me. Devin Singletary and Zach Moss. This is a very formidable Washington football team defensive line. They do not give up a ton of points to the running back position. And so I'm not going to be starting Singletary or Moss, who are basically in full-on committees in this offense. And then we're moving on to another game where I'm actually going to be starting 0 of the running backs. It's going to be the Jets traveling to Denver to take on the Broncos. For the Jets, these guys are in a full-on committee, but it's not just 2 running backs, it's 3 running backs. So Michael Carter, Ty Johnson, and Tevin Coleman are all going to be on the bench. And then for the Broncos, Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon, for as long as they're splitting carries 50-50, I don't have a ton of interest in either of them just because they basically get no work in the receiving game. Aside from Melvin Gordon having that crazy long touchdown run in week 1, they just haven't put together any solid performances. They're both just taking away from their upside, so I'm just not interested in either of those players. Then we've got a matchup here between the Dolphins and the Raiders, which may just end up being an abysmal game. We've got Tua who's hurt, Derek Carr's hurt, Josh Jacobs is hurt. All these injuries. We could end up seeing 2 backup quarterbacks kind of duel. But the Raiders also have Marcus Mariota injured, so this truly could be a very rough game. For the Dolphins, I'm just going to be starting Myles Gaskin. He hasn't lit up the stat sheet. I feel like week 1 he was solid. He got a lot of that passing work. Week 2, that's just a tough game to analyze because the offense was just so terribly bad. They didn't even score, so they kind of just got taken out of the game plan right away. And then I'm going to be sitting his 2 backups, Salvon Ahmed and Malcolm Brown. For the Raiders, I just have Josh Jacobs listed as a sit. Gruden said he was very questionable for Sunday, so that tells me there's a decent chance he's not going to play. They ruled him out pretty early in the week going into week 2, so I think this may be an injury that lingers on for at least 1 more week. And then even when Josh Jacobs was out, Kenyon Drake really did not get the work that I think a lot of people expected him to. He didn't come in and take over Josh Jacobs' carries, so with him just as a passing back, not something I want to start in my lineup. And then we're on to a nice running back matchup here between the Seahawks and the Vikings. Chris Carson and Dalvin Cook are both no doubters to put into your starting lineup. And then this next game here is probably one of the best overall matchups this week. It's the Buccaneers traveling to Los Angeles to face off against the Rams. And on this Bucs team, it's always going to be tough to navigate this running back room, but I think Leonard Fournette really has the opportunity to kind of solidify himself into this offense. He didn't play great in week 2. He almost had a big-time fumble that could have cost the Buccaneers, but even though he kind of struggled, he also just totally missed a hole on a 4th and 1 and led them to turn the ball over. And so with all of that said, he was still significantly better than Ronald Jones, which just tells you everything you need to know about Rojo. First, he catches a pass out of the backfield, and literally, instead of lowering his shoulder into the defense to get that extra yard for the first, he literally just sidesteps out of bounds a yard before the first down marker, ends up really costing the Bucs. And then also, he just totally blew a blocking assignment, got Brady lit up. So I just think he's going to continue to lose touches as we go farther and farther into the season. And we really just haven't seen them kind of unleash Giovanni Bernard. I thought he'd be more involved as a pass-catching back. He really just hasn't gotten a ton of opportunity. So in this game, it's going to be Fournette that I want in my lineup. On this Rams team, Darrell Henderson is dealing with a rib issue. If he's the starter and he's healthy, he's ready to go, he's going to be in my lineup, and Sony Michel is going to be on the bench. If Henderson does not go, then I don't think I'd feel super confident starting Sony Michel. They may kind of use a committee behind Henderson, and this is already a very tough Buccaneers defense to go against. Running backs really struggle against them, so that's just kind of something we're going to have to monitor. Does McVay come out and say that Michel is going to be the workhorse? We just kind of have to wait and see. But right now, it's going to be Henderson as a start and Sony Michel as a sit. Then for the Sunday night football game, it's going to be the Packers facing off against the 49ers. Aaron Jones, major bounce back game last night. Was super excited to see it because I was very high on him going into the season. He was my RB5 overall. So you love to see that 4 touchdown performance. I'm going to be sitting his backup, A.J. Dillon. Aaron Jones is the guy. I don't know why everyone was hyping up A.J. Dillon so much. I didn't even think he was going to kind of take over that Jamal Williams role. People were kind of docking Aaron Jones for A.J. Dillon, when in reality, Jamal Williams was a super involved backup, so not concerned about A.J. Dillon. On this 49ers team, we really have to wait and see how this plays out. So far, Elijah Mitchell has been deemed day-to-day. JaMychal Hasty has a high ankle sprain, which could be week to week, and Trey Sermon has a concussion. So, right now I have Elijah Mitchell listed as a start, but if Hasty and Sermon, somehow are ready to play Sunday, maybe Mitchell's injury kind of lingers, this could all be shifted up. But basically, if all three of these players are in, then Elijah Mitchell is going to be the starter. And I also have him listed as a start here, just because it seems like Hasty and Sermon are more likely to miss extended time and not play this Sunday. But like I mentioned, a situation you guys are going to have to monitor, in the next few days. And then we're on to the last matchup of the week, Monday Night Football. It's going to be the Philadelphia Eagles traveling to Dallas to play the Cowboys. I'm going to be starting Miles Sanders. Hasn't had a ton of touchdown luck, but is getting a solid amount of touches where he has to be in your lineup. I'm going to be sitting his handcuff, Kenneth Gainwell. He's gotten a solid amount of touches, but just not enough where you want him in your starting lineup. For the Cowboys, I'm going to be starting Zeke and sitting Tony Pollard, but this is kind of a tough call. I'm just saying if you guys can sell Zeke high, I think you really should. Pollard was super involved week 2. Hopefully that was just a one-time thing, but I'm really not betting on it, especially because Pollard was way more effective in his touches than Zeke was. So for week 3, I'm going to be starting Zeke, sitting Pollard, but that's definitely kind of a fluid situation there in Dallas. All right, so those are all 16 week 3 matchups, which running backs I'm starting, which running backs I'm sitting. If you guys enjoyed the content, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, then let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. I'm also going to be posting my wide receiver start sit today, and then my tight ends and quarterbacks tomorrow. So stay tuned for all of those. But thank you for stopping by, and I'll see you guys next time.